Hi, I'm Andrew Rodriguez, and welcome to Psycho Bible, babbling about psychology and theology. I'm going to take a break from the typical videos I do and share some reflections on some movies I just recently saw, starting with A Real Pain from last year, the Academy Award winning movie, and especially thanks to Kieran Culkin's amazing performance. It's written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. Normally, I'm not a fan of Jesse Eisenberg. His whole shtick, fast talking, anxious guy, kind of grates on me, and he ruined Lex Luthor for me in the Superman movies. But he's perfect for this particular role he does. Someone who's highly anxious, and uh, him and Kieran Culkin work great off of each other. It's amazing. So I knew I was going to love this movie when I first saw the trailer last year. I'm like, this is gonna be a good one, especially with the fact that they were doing it in Poland, and I was in Poland for the first time ever in 2023, and that's really the perfect backdrop for this particular story about two cousins who are pretty much like brothers, though they haven't seen each other in quite a while, or they don't see each other as often as they used to. But growing up, they spent a lot of time together. And their grandmother, who was from Poland, passed away. And she left in her will some funds for them to go to Poland to see where she lived, see where she grew up. And so they go and they book a tour uh, for people who are interested in Jewish Polish people, in particular those who survived or left Poland because of the Holocaust. So it's not supposed to be like a fun tour, but a very poignant one. So they meet up this tour group, and it's sort of like a rap group, therapy session group. Each person's there for particular reasons, some just because they want to connect with their roots, some because they're going through a major change in their life. There's a guy from Rwanda who survived the genocide there, and he, over time, converted to Judaism, and he's been so inspired by their story and founding community with them that he is doing this pretty much as a pilgrimage. And so they all are sort of bonding over their reasons for coming. And so it was really cool for me to watch this with my wife so I could show her, oh, I was there. I saw that monument. I was there. I went down that street. I knew where they were at different points, and so that's pretty cool to have seen some of the places they're going. But I think in particular, given what this story is about, of dealing with pain, dealing with generational trauma, your own personal past trauma, a perfect backdrop, because as I mentioned, Poland is often referred to, in particular I would say Warsaw, as like the Phoenix city or Phoenix country because it keeps rising from the ashes. If you go to Warsaw, you can tell if a building is authentic, if it's a historical building, if there are bullet holes in it. Because other than those parts of the buildings, everything has been leveled during World War II. And they had to completely rebuild the city, at least the historic section of Warsaw. And so it's risen from the ashes. It's had various incarnations. It's very poignant as well. They have Chopin is basically their soundtrack to the whole film. His music is playing, and he's Poland's great claim to fame, at least in the music world. So they were very smart, or Jesse Eisenberg was very smart in choosing Poland as a setting for this, because the story is about overcoming difficulty, rising from the ashes. And the two different ways that you can work through difficulty is on full display. I mean, obviously you got multiple different approaches you see in different characters. Each person gets a moment where you can see who they are. But obviously the two main characters are the two cousins, Benji and Dave. Benji, Kieran Culkin's character, you see right away, he embraces life, he's extroverted, he loves getting to know people, even as he's going through the airport and he's talking to the TSA agent, he's like, oh man, she's dope. What? Dave, Jesse Eisenberg's character is confused. Like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, he just had a conversation with the TSA agent, and he learned something about her, that her dad does security at some other sports arena. I forget which one. And so he just takes those opportunities to get to know people, and he lives in the moment. He says what he's thinking, what he's feeling, no filter, and even does things that might seem off-putting when each person in the group is sharing their story. And the guy from Rwanda, I forget his name, shares how he survived the genocide. He's like, oh snap, and he apologizes. I didn't mean it like in a casual way, but I just really fascinated by people's stories. And you can see Dave is embarrassed for his cousin, and he's anxious about how he's being viewed. But the guy from Rwanda actually really appreciated it. He's like, oh, I love when people show an interest in my story and where I'm from. So you see right where the Benji just is charming. He wins people over. He's exciting. He's fun to be around. He just lives life. And then you have Dave, who's right away in the first couple minutes of this movie, you can see who he is. He's running late to get to the airport. He's calling Benji, leaving multiple voicemails. He's anxious. He's always frantic. He's running behind. So that's who he is. You get a glimpse at right there of who he is. And so it's quite obvious to all of us right away how neurotic Dave is. And yet he's actually oblivious to how he comes off to people. He comes off as awkward and stiff and stilted. But he thinks that he's the one who's appropriate and normal. And he's always embarrassed for Benji and trying to cover his tracks and make him, make up for whatever social faux pas he's committing. And yet he's the one who really is the one who looks most awkward. But Benji isn't off the hook. It's easy in the beginning to think Benji is just fun-loving and extroverted, though maybe a bit inappropriate socially. But his gregariousness is disarming. So you start to think, maybe it's not so bad to have no filter and express freely what you feel and think in the moment. But then there's a scene, spoiler warning, okay, where they're at the dinner at a restaurant, and Benji excuses himself to use the restroom, and we hear what the others in the group think of him. Because even though your first impression of him is, oh man, he's fun, he's lively, he's enjoyable, he's charming, day two, you see, oh, he's got some darker side. He's moody. He lashes out. He goes from being so fun-loving to then he's kind of really bothered that they're in the luxurious section of a train when their ancestors were on a train heading to a concentration camp. And he doesn't see how that fit. It wasn't... And he has really good points throughout the movie of how they're not really fully embracing the experience that they're supposed to be, learning about when it comes to their ancestors and the trauma and the difficulties they went through. So he has a lot of good points, but he's so preachy and judgmental and constantly attacking the rich. He sounds like a typical leftist these days. And he's not doing anything to better himself. He lives in his mom's basement, and he isn't really doing much with his life. And so his preachiness actually, you learn, does rub some of the people in the group the wrong way. And some of his inappropriateness bothers some of them. They see, he's so troubled. And so the story then flips it around, and we see, things aren't so good. But then it does another flip. So that when they finally part company with the groups, because now they're going to go on their own side quest to visit their grandmother's childhood home, you see that when they part company with the group, they've still all come around to appreciate Benji more. Even the tour guide, whom Benji reamed out earlier for leaving out the human element of the tour, has come around to express gratitude for his honest, actionable feedback. And Dave, the one who works so hard to be proper, just gets a simple, "Bye, Dave." So it seems like things all worked out for Benji in the end with the group and their acceptance of him and their embracing of who he was. And despite Dave's best efforts to be so appropriate, it's kind of left as the, not so memorable one. The great irony, though, is Dave is the one with the family to come home to. Benji, the one who loves people, is all alone. In the closing shot, you can see the pain in his eyes as he's back in the airport and he's by himself again. And it's just so poignant. The film does a great job just showing. Doesn't have to tell you so much, though there's moments where they literally do say this, just how much we need people. We don't want to be alone. That's really one of the main themes of the whole movie. As they're walking, they're on their tour, Dave and Benji are talking, and after a little bit, he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go hang out with some of the others in the group, and that Marshall lady, she's by herself right now." And Dave's like, "Well, maybe she wants to be alone." And Benji says, "What? No one wants to be alone." Right there, that's the message of the movie. And the way he approaches her, just so disarming. He goes up to her, "Hey, what are you doing by yourself? What are you, a big fat loser?" Yeah. And he just is so disarming with how blunt or just outrageous he can be. And the thing when he has these moments of honesty with his cousin, he brings up how it hurts that he barely ever sees him. You got your big important job doing ad banners online, and why don't you ever come out to visit me? I missed our times together. He's pleading with him to spend time with him. And yet, when he gets the opportunity at the very end of the movie, when Dave asks him, "Well, why don't you come home with me for dinner once they get back to New York City?" Because that's where Dave lives. Benji doesn't take him up on the offer. He'd rather be in the airport because that's where you can meet all sorts of people. But you don't really, because when you see him, all he does is sit there and he watches people. I imagine he'll have conversations with passersby, but he's not taking the opportunity that was finally given to him that he had been longing for to get the connection he wants. And so it's also a stark reminder to us that so many of us long for company, long for companionship, but when it's right in our faces, sometimes we just don't seize it. Take those opportunities. We're heading into May, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And as I'm watching the movie, I couldn't help but think of a few years ago, my college roommate who killed himself through suicide, and how it was beginning of April where he ended his life, and the funeral wasn't until May, or at least the end of April. And so, yeah, it was May. That experience really, really reminded me of how important relationships are. So it was interesting time watching this movie this past week and just reflecting on that. And so take the opportunities when you notice someone's alone. I want to give a shout out to a family from church, the Philmans. We didn't have any place to go, my wife and I, for Easter. We're spread out. None of us have family nearby. And so just spontaneously asked us, "What are you guys doing for Easter?" We had no plans. We didn't even know what we were going to eat. Like, we're going to make something or buy something, who knows? And they're like, "Come to our place." They're already going to have other company there, and they had games planned, and they were going to have fun. It was exactly what we needed. Reach out to people. I can't tell you how much I appreciated that. No one's made to be alone. And because you never know what someone else may be dealing with. And that was quite apparent through the movie. Each person is walking through the difficulties of life in their own unique way. There's this push in kind of the right-wing world that I'm a part of to downplay the importance of emotions and to push for stoicism. I've made videos about this already. So watch my commentary in response to a Matt Walsh talking about how men don't cry or they shouldn't cry, and it's shameful. But what you see is this contrast between Benji and Dave. Benji, who is on the one hand so extreme in feeling his emotions and living by his emotions, embracing every emotion that's on the spectrum of emotions. And there's something beautiful about that, but we also see the danger and risk in that, because halfway through the movie we find out that just a few months prior to their trip, he had attempted a suicide. So the things that can make him so fun-loving and gregarious and extroverted, his living by his emotions and having no filter, having no impulse control, can also be the thing that's dangerous for him. Because when you live by your emotions, then when your emotions go down, and I would think that would be the case with someone like him, who I suspect is a good case study of someone with bipolar disorder. When he's up, he's real up. When he's down, he's real down. You can be impulsive if you just go by your emotions. And so our response could think, well, that's why we need to be more stoic and not, push our emotions down, not think about how we feel, not, that's navel gazing, and that's self-indulgent to be thinking about your feelings and express your feelings. But then you get Dave, Jesse Eisenberg's character, and all he's trying to do the entire movie is push down his emotions. And he's not doing a good job. You see the obsessive-compulsive tendencies, the anxiety, the stiffness, the awkwardness. He can't just be, let alone be in the moment. He needs his cousin to help him loosen up, to live life. And there came a moment where they're on one of the rooftops doing something I do not approve of, smoking a joint, and they're reflecting on things, and Benji just says to him, "What happened to you, man? You used to feel your feelings." And Dave says, "I know. I can't stand it. I used to cry all the time. I can't stand that. I'm trying not to feel my feelings." And so we got these two extremes. Feel every feeling and express every feeling without any filter, any second thought, any discretion, and then shut down all your feelings. And neither is the right way to go. There needs to be a merger of the two, where you have some wisdom, discretion. All right, how should I then express myself? When do I go too far? Our emotions are meant to be felt and then dealt with, guided by reason, guided by a knowledge and understanding of the good. And so that's what Dave needs to understand, that your emotions are good. God gave you emotions for a reason, to help you navigate life, to color life. Otherwise it's stale and it's black and white. But life is meant to be felt vibrantly. That means embracing the full human experience, the emotions, whether it's pain, it's sadness, fear. You can't live life without all of that comes with it, the joy and the pain. But you can't let those control you either. Emotions are meant to inform you, not control you. But then you can't just live out your emotions any way you like. You have to bring them in and consider how others may be impacted. And that's another point this film breaks up. The attempted suicide has had such a great impact. It's stuck in Dave's mind when he saw his cousin there, passed out from overdosing on pills. What you choose to do with your emotions isn't just about you. It has an impact on those who love you and care about you. So be mindful of that. That's why so much of my work, I teach my clients to be mindful, to be aware of their feelings, not to stuff them down, to be aware, but then deal with them. And that means if you're feeling joy and happiness, you deal with joy and happiness by expressing it, sharing it, verbalizing it with someone. Anger, Sometimes it means to take action in some way. Sometimes it means, all right, I need to downregulate. I need to relax a bit and then figure out if there's something I can actually do about the situation. But it's not just to ignore it. You can only get to that place where you can effectively move past an emotion when you can recognize it. So start with that. Start with recognizing your feelings and identifying, well, what is the purpose of this feeling? What does this lead me to do? What is the need that's underlying it? So you get a really good case study in this film of just the reality that living life requires you to face the difficulties of emotions, particularly pain. And some of that pain is generational. I know this may sound really woke, because the woke, the leftists like to really overplay how much generational trauma different marginalized people groups have. But if you do not deal with your emotions, with the pain from your experiences, that will be passed down to your next generation. Like I said, how you deal with your emotions doesn't just impact you. And so this is a good lesson right here to work on your crap. Figure your stuff out so that you can set up the next generation a bit better. And this really stood out to me because about 10 years ago, my parents went on a missions trip to Israel to work with an organization that serves Holocaust survivors. And so many of them are there by themselves because when they lived through the Holocaust, they were so traumatized that when they married and they had children, but they didn't work through it. They learned to just stuff the feelings. They didn't work through the pain that they went through. It had an impact on how they parented their kids. And to the point where so many of their kids don't want anything to do with them. And so you have these elderly people in Israel who were Holocaust survivors, and now they're abandoned by their own children. Their children don't want anything to do with them because of how they traumatized them because they didn't work through their own trauma. And that might be a bit of what happened for these two boys. Generational trauma from grandma. One of them had great experiences with grandmother. The other one didn't see her the same way. He thought she was very hard and kind of cruel at times. The other one said, well, she spoke truth to me. She told me like it was. Benji. And it makes sense. That's why he says things how it is. And so I can imagine how that might have impacted their own fathers, their cousins through their dads or brothers. So how did their grandmother raise their dads? How did their dads then raise them based on the way their grandmothers treated them? That's how generational trauma gets passed down when it's not dealt with in that way. So that you're not dumping your baggage onto your children. So just another beautiful picture of how important it is to deal with your stuff. Not just for your sake, but for all those that you come in contact with. You never know. And so yeah, that means embracing the full range of the human experience. The ups and downs. Love, beauty, fear, and pain. So if you haven't watched the movie, I highly recommend checking it out. It's worthy of all the rewards it's getting, the accolades it's getting. It's a pretty much perfect movie. I loved it. So if you had thoughts, if you saw it, please drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Until next time, please know that Jesus loves you freely, fully, faithfully, and fruitfully. Take care.